There are moments in life when everything feels unfair. You do your best, you give your all, and still, things don't work out the way you hoped. You watch others succeed while you struggle, and you wonder, why me? The pain of unanswered prayers, broken dreams, and unexpected losses can make you question everything. You might find yourself asking, where is God in all of this? Why does it feel like he's silent when I need him the most? It's hard to trust God when life doesn't make sense. It's hard to hold on when your heart is breaking, when the weight of disappointment feels too heavy to carry. You look around, and the unfairness feels overwhelming. Good people suffer. Bad things happen without reason, and prayers seem to go unheard. In those moments, trust feels like the hardest thing to give. But trust isn't about having all the answers. It's about believing that even when you don't understand, God is still good. Even when the story doesn't unfold the way you planned, he's still writing it with purpose. Trust doesn't erase the pain, but it gives you the strength to face it. It's the quiet confidence that says, I don't know why this is happening, but I know I'm not alone. Sometimes we think trusting God means we won't feel fear or doubt. But real trust often shows up in the middle of those emotions. It's choosing to believe in his goodness even when life feels anything but good. It's holding on when everything in you wants to let go. It's whispering, I still believe, even through tears. So if life feels unfair right now, it's okay to be honest about it. It's okay to feel hurt, confused, even angry. God can handle your questions. He's not afraid of your doubt. What matters is that you keep coming back to him, even with a fragile heart. Because he's not just the God of the good times. He's the God who stands with you in the hardest moments, holding you when life feels like too much. And even when it doesn't feel like it, he's working. Behind the scenes, in the silence, in the waiting. You can trust him, even here, especially here. When life feels unfair, it's easy to believe that God is distant, that he's forgotten you or turned his back. The silence can feel deafening, the unanswered prayers like echoes fading into nothingness. You start to wonder if your faith even matters, if your prayers are just words lost in the air. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't mean absence. Just because you can't see what God is doing doesn't mean he's not working. Trusting God isn't about understanding every detail. It's about believing that even in the chaos, he's in control. Imagine a tapestry being woven from the back. It looks messy, tangled, full of knots and loose threads. But when you turn it over, you see the beautiful picture that was being created all along. Life often feels like that messy side of the tapestry. All we see are the knots and broken threads. But God sees the full picture, the masterpiece that's unfolding, even when we can't. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to ask, why? Even Jesus, in his deepest pain, cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? If he could be honest with his Father, so can you. God doesn't ask you to pretend everything's fine. He asks you to bring your brokenness to him, to trust him with the parts of your heart that don't make sense. Trust isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily choice. Some days it feels easy. Other days it's like holding on to a fragile thread, whispering, I don't understand, but I'm still here. And that's enough. Trust doesn't mean you won't feel afraid. It means you choose to believe there's more to the story, even when you can't see it yet. So when life feels unfair, don't pull away from God. Lean in, cry out, be honest. And then even with shaky hands and a heavy heart, choose to trust. Not because everything makes sense, but because he's the one who holds it all together, even when you can't. There's something powerful about choosing to trust God when life feels the most unfair. It's not about ignoring your pain or pretending everything is okay. It's about acknowledging the hurt, the disappointment, the confusion, and still deciding to hold on. Trust doesn't require perfect faith. It requires a willing heart, even a fragile one. Think about the times in your life when you felt completely lost, when you thought you couldn't make it through. But here you are. Not because the journey was easy, but because somewhere along the way, you found enough strength to take one more step. That strength didn't come from having all the answers. It came from believing, sometimes with nothing more than a whisper, that there was hope beyond what you could see. Trusting God when life is unfair is like walking through a dark tunnel. You can't see the light yet, but you keep moving forward because you believe it's there. You don't have to see the end to keep walking. You just have to trust that God is walking with you, even when it feels like you're alone. Sometimes, the unfairness of life makes you question everything. Why do good people suffer? Why do bad things happen without reason? Why does God allow heartbreak, loss, disappointment? These are questions without easy answers. But maybe the point isn't to have all the answers. Maybe the point is to discover that even in the absence of answers, God's presence is enough. He's not a distant observer, watching your struggles from afar. He's right there in the middle of it, holding your hand, even when you can't feel it. Wiping your tears, even when you think no one sees. Whispering, "I'm here. I haven't left. I never will." So when life feels unfair, when the questions outweigh the answers, when hope feels out of reach, keep going, keep trusting. Not because you understand, but because you believe in the one who does. And even when your faith feels small, it's enough. Because it's not the size of your faith that matters. It's the strength of the one you're holding on to. When life feels unfair, it's natural to look for signs that things will get better, to search for reasons, for clarity, for something to hold on to. But sometimes, the answers don't come the way we expect. The healing takes longer. The breakthrough feels distant. The silence stretches on. In those moments, trust can feel like standing on shaky ground, trying to believe in something you can't see, trying to hold on to hope when everything around you feels like it's falling apart. But maybe that's where real trust grows, in the spaces where certainty is absent. Trust isn't built when life is easy. It's forged in the fire, in the waiting, in the moments when nothing makes sense, and yet somehow you choose to believe anyway. Not because it's easy, but because deep down, you know there's more to the story than what you can see right now. Think of a seed buried in the ground. It's hidden, unseen, surrounded by darkness. But even though nothing seems to be happening, growth is taking place beneath the surface. Roots are stretching. Foundations are being laid, preparing for the moment it will break through the soil. Your faith is like that seed. Just because you don't see growth doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because you don't feel God's presence doesn't mean He's not there. Often, He's working in the hidden places, in the depths of your heart, building strength, resilience, and a faith that can withstand any storm. It's okay if your trust feels fragile. It's okay if some days all you can do is whisper, "I still believe." God isn't asking for perfection. He's asking for your heart, even when it's broken, especially when it's broken. Because that's when His love meets you the deepest, not in your strength, but in your surrender. So, if life feels unfair right now, don't be afraid of the questions, the doubts, the hard days. They don't disqualify your faith. They're part of the journey. What matters is that you keep showing up, Keep reaching out. Keep holding on. Not because you have it all figured out, but because you know the one who does. And even in the silence, even in the struggle, he's holding you. Always. There's something sacred about trusting God in the middle of life's unfair moments. It's not a blind, naive faith that ignores the pain. It's a courageous choice to believe in His goodness, even when everything around you feels broken. Trust doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you've decided to anchor your heart to the truth that God's character doesn't change, even when your circumstances do. It's easy to trust when prayers are answered quickly, when doors open, when life feels full of blessings. But what about the seasons when nothing goes as planned? When the healing doesn't come? When relationships fall apart? When loss feels overwhelming? In those moments, trust becomes an act of surrender. Not surrender to the pain, but surrender to the one who holds it all. God never promised that life would be fair. In fact, He told us there would be trouble, but He also promised that He would be with us in the trouble. That's the difference. Trust isn't about expecting a life without pain. It's about believing you're never facing that pain alone. Even when it feels like He's silent, He's not absent. His presence is woven into every tear, every question, every sleepless night. Sometimes the most powerful prayer isn't, "God, take this away," but, "God, stay with me through it." Because there's a kind of peace that doesn't come from the absence of struggle. It comes from the presence of God in the middle of it. His presence doesn't always change the situation, but it changes you. It gives you the strength to stand, the courage to hope, the grace to keep going even when you don't understand. And here's the truth: God sees you. He sees the battles you're fighting, the heartbreak you carry, the silent prayers you whisper when no one else is around. He's not distant. He's not indifferent. His heart breaks with yours, and His love surrounds you, even in the moments when life feels most unfair. So, when the weight feels too heavy, when your faith feels small, when the answers don't come, breathe. Lean in, trust. Not because the situation makes sense, but because you're held by the one who is bigger than it all, the one who is faithful, the one who never lets go. At the end of it all, trusting God when life feels unfair isn't about having all the answers. It's about resting in the truth that even when life doesn't make sense, God is still good. His love isn't based on your circumstances. It's rooted in His unchanging nature. The storms may rage, the questions may remain unanswered, but His faithfulness never wavers. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, even when life feels anything but certain. You might feel like your heart is too broken, your faith too fragile, your hope hanging by a thread. But that's okay. God isn't asking you to be strong enough. He's asking you to let Him be your strength. You don't have to carry it all. You were never meant to. When the weight of the world feels too heavy, He's the one who holds you up. His arms are strong enough for your doubts, your fears, your pain. And here's what's beautiful. God doesn't waste your pain. Every tear, every heartbreak, every moment of wondering why, He sees it all. And even when you don't understand it, He's weaving it into a story bigger than you can imagine. A story of redemption, of hope, of beauty rising from the ashes. The very places that feel like the end might just be the beginning of something new. You don't have to pretend it's easy. You don't have to have it all figured out. Real trust looks like showing up in the middle of the mess and saying, "I don't get it, but I'm still here. I still believe." It's holding on to His promises, even with trembling hands. It's choosing hope when despair feels closer. It's knowing that even when your faith feels small, it's enough. because it's not the size of your faith that matters. It's the one you're placing it in. So today, if life feels unfair, if the road is hard, if your heart is weary, know this: you are not alone. God is with you in every step, in every tear, in every silent prayer. His love is deeper than your pain, stronger than your doubts, and more constant than the struggles you face. Trust doesn't erase the hard parts of life, but it reminds you that they don't have the final word. He does. And he's writing a story of hope, of healing, of unfailing love. A story where even in the darkness, you are never forgotten, never forsaken, and always, always held.